You could ignore the Sunday recap branding here as it is Tuesday night, and we're just going to kind of give a quick run through NFL free agency, talk a little draft, basically just conversation here tonight for myself and Mike. But NFL free agency opens this week. Today was the tag deadline. A lot to unwrap with that. We'll maybe dabble into a little bit of baseball, but I will once again remind everybody that the Burrows is beginning during week one of the baseball season. Mike and I will be in person together doing the Burrows once a week, and that is going to be primarily focused on the Yankees and the Mets and New York baseball, but we will be branching out as well for about a quarter of every episode into around the league. We have some good segments, fun stuff that you guys can play along with. If you're tuned in watching, you can comment to share thoughts, share any questions if you want us to discuss anything, whether that's tonight, whether that's on the Burrows. You can also do that as well for all of our live streams here on BTO Media. So, Mike, let's start before we get to the tag stuff, which we'll do a little bit later. This is a pretty good quarterback offseason as far as veterans that are available. We have Kirk Cousins, unrestricted free agent. Russell Wilson now is an unrestricted free agent. Baker Mayfield, do we want to even discuss him? Probably not, we said, because we both agree he's going to be back in Tampa. I don't think he hits the open market, but for the sake of the conversation, unrestricted free agent. And Justin Fields already has a foot out the door in Chicago via trade. So let's start with Kirk here. Your thoughts on his situation, where he might end up?
You know, it's funny that we're now in this situation where it's a quarterback carousel almost every offseason, because we never had this. We never had where quarterbacks had this much movement. And I think this is better for the league, where there is a little bit more of change within the quarterbacks. Kirk's interesting, man, because Kirk can still play. He's great, man. And, you put him on a team that has a ready-made roster, offensively, especially, you could do some damage. So did you ask me where I think he's going to go?
Yeah.
I think he's going to end up in Atlanta. I don't think he goes back to Minnesota. I think the obvious pick at this point seems to be Atlanta. They have some pieces in place, a pretty decent offensive line. They can run the ball. They got a couple of backs, including Bijan. We all know, the usage problems last year with Arthur Smith. At, Drake London, I mean, you give him a real quarterback, I think we're going to see him do some damage. They probably need another receiver to go along with London and Pitts, but getting these guys the ball is going to be very important. You got weapons there. You'll have a running game there. And Raheem Morris, a defensive head coach, he'll handle the defense, grab some players there. If Atlanta is able to grab Kirk for 3 years, I think this is a team that wins that division for 3 straight years.
Yeah, for Atlanta, I think that this, call me crazy. He was on a 13-win team last year. They won 13 or 14 games last year. 13, right? In Minnesota. But I think that this is the best team Kirk will ever play for if he ends up in Atlanta, because he never had a team this good in Washington. I don't think, had a team that I project to be as good as Atlanta in Minnesota. But you're right. They do need another receiver. So if you do get Kirk in next week, if you get Kirk Cousins out of free agency, Raheem Morris has to be feeling pretty good, right? You don't have to, with him as your head coach, you don't have to draft defense at 8, even though that would be your roster need. Mm-hmm. You trust him to develop a second-round, third-round guy into a starter that you can get in the top 10 picks. Try to find those steals day 2 and 3 with a defensive-minded head coach, and quite a good one, might I add. But you have a really rich class here to add that receiver that opens things up for Pitts and for London and for Robinson. You could add another real talent at skill position. I've hated the way they've operated the draft the last few years, but I will say they might get themselves into a spot where it all lines up pretty nicely if Kirk Cousins is the guy, because realistically, one of Neighbors, Bowers, or Odunze are going to be there for Atlanta at pick 8. And I would take whichever one of the 3 is there, starting with the 2 receivers. And then I'd go Bowers if he's available.
I can't go Bowers.
Call me crazy, man, because Bowers is a better tight end than Pitts, and Pitts could line up out at receiver and dominate. He'd be a monster red zone. Imagine the 2 tight end with those 2 guys running around the field. I think
but you're going to tell me this franchise, even though it's not the same regime, although up front in the front office it might be, you're going to tell me this team is going to go, what is it, the second time in 5 years or whatever, however many years, 4 years, they're going to take a tight end in the top 10.
Well, I'm also going to share this. I don't think Kyle Pitts is that good. So
right. I would agree with
I'm not in the group because there's the group of people we both understand that it exists that think that this guy is in the Kittle, Kelsey, Andrews territory and Arthur Smith held him back. I understand he didn't have great quarterback play. I understand the play calling wasn't good, but the tape doesn't lie. He's not a great NFL route runner. He's not a dominant tight end. However, I think you line him up in the slot, put him against the undersized nickels, create some matchups. I think that's a great nightmare situation with those two guys in the same offense.
But I think if you add Kirk, and obviously you're getting rid of Arthur Smith, I think he'll have enough production as a tight end research. He's a solid middle of the pack tight end. Maybe it's not worth the pick they used to get him, but you're saying, okay, this guy can play in this league. You know, what is he at 800, 900 yards? You'd say, okay, he had a really nice year with a guy like Kirk back there and, you know, a different coach. I'd be confident in that. I'm thinking about the fact that, you know, possibly a Neighbors or Roma Dunze falls to them. That would be dangerous. But listen, those guys might not be there at that point. And, you know, maybe they take their best player available, a defensive player. You give Morris a defensive guy. There are so many receivers in this draft. They can nab one in the second round and get that number 2 guy next to Drake London. They're in a good spot if they're able to save some of their picks by not having to trade up and grab a quarterback if they're able to get Kirk here.
I feel that for Morris, this is a nice, stable situation for a second head coaching job, but you have to land the veteran quarterback for it to be that way. So,
well, now you're going to have expectation if you get this quarterback, which can also is a little uneven now.
Absolutely, but I think, you know, you're a 7-win team at the floor with the division if you get Kirk Cousins. Even, you know what, I'm not going to go that far with Russ, but if you get Kirk Cousins, I think that your floor is 7 wins. 8 has won the division the last 2 years. So I don't know, man. I think this is a nice, stable situation for Morris.
If they get Cousins, I would project them to win 10 or 11 games in a bad division.
Oh, me too.
An NFC that's presumably weak again.
Yeah,
definitely a 10-win team.
And that South is so horrible. It is such
if they got Russ, they'd win 9 or 10 games this season and win the division.
I mean, Carolina's going to be worse. The Saints are going to be worse. I can't expect Carolina to win more than 4 games next year.
No, and then you have the Bucs, who are most likely going to take a little bit of a drop off there.
You would think they take a step back, but if not, I thought last year Baker Mayfield had a career year. That was their ceiling. Last season. They won 8 games. And won the division.
If you moved Baker Mayfield over to Atlanta, they would have won 10 games. The roster is kind of there. As much as you mentioned, you're 100% right. And I always forget about how badly they've drafted the past couple of seasons. Just awful. If you're talking about building a football team, they've done it ass backwards for the past 3 or 4 years. And yet they're still in a pretty good situation where you say, okay, Kirk comes in here. They're a 10-win team.
My biggest issue with the way that they've drafted is Drake London, for me, from watching it, and London's actually proved me wrong. He's looked good in the NFL. He's looked like a high-end 2. I didn't even think he was a first-round receiver that year. I knew he was going to go in the first round, but the gap between, and I'm telling you, this is not a crazy take. I'm not trying to brag about it. The gap between Garrett Wilson and Drake London in college was so astronomical that I could not believe a team actually took London over Wilson. I mean, it was unfathomable because that was a big insider take throughout that offseason was London could be the first receiver off the board. And I'm just thinking, there's absolutely no way. That's how I feel right now with the McCarthy over Daniels or May thing that's going around. I'm like, there's absolutely no way. And then I'll just be dumbfounded if it happens. But, man, taking him over. And then I thought the gap between Olave and London was significant. I thought it was huge because I loved Olave out of college. I thought those 2 guys from Ohio State were awesome. And then there were a few other guys after him. Treylon Burks was one of them who I had as 4th that year. And I want to say it was Jahan Dotson was 3rd that year.
You wouldn't have taken London in the first round, really?
I would not have, because he didn't get separation in college, and he had a bad knee injury in his I don't know if it was his junior or senior year, but the final season he played, and he still declared for the draft. I did not think there was enough there to draft London, not even to London himself, but to draft London over the other guys that were there. That was not a move I would have made, and it just came down to I didn't have him as a top 30 player.
Now, do you think? Right? Do you think he has the potential with the right quarterback to be that number one guy in Atlanta?
No, but I think he could be a Devontae Smith level number 2.
Okay.
So that's that's a really good number 2 and a real low end 1, but you need another guy. And I don't think he'll make it there because teams love him and he's great. I think he's my 4th overall player, is Neighbors. But Neighbors is the guy that I would love to see get put into this offense. And I think he would just take the top off all day and open everything underneath. But that's not going to happen. He's not going to be
a lot of teams in this top 8 that are looking at this draft, and we'll talk about it with the Giants later. And it's like you are in desperate need of that number 1 wide receiver, that number 1 weapon. And the guys are there. There are 3 guys, no doubt about it. Those guys are going to be hits in the NFL. And, in the top 8, how many teams need those guys? And they're all going to be gone probably by then.
Yeah. So let's move on quick before we get back to the draft.
Yeah. Big draft, guys.
There's two picks in the top 9 is Chicago. And you know what 2 picks in the top 9 means? Justin Fields isn't their quarterback next year.
Yeah.
So where is he going to end up? I got maybe a wild card destination with Vegas that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. I knew
it was going to be the same. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going Vegas. We have great minds, the 2 of us. But everyone thinks Atlanta for this because it's the obvious Georgia tie. He's from Atlanta. But I can't see them going this route. I think Kirk is a way safer option for them for a 2-year bridge guy. He's more available because he's an unrestricted free agent. And the Minnesota, I have to rule out for Fields because of the division rivalry aspect. I think Vegas, out of conference team looking for a quarterback, and Antonio Pierce needs some sort of stability there. And Fields provides that.
Yeah.
But he also provides the what if he doesn't work out situation for Pierce, and then we have to go find another guy in a year or 2. I think Fields will end up in Vegas, and I think it'll be a nice little fit, competitive team.
It's hysterical that if you go on Twitter, right, and you see all these, casual fans, Fields is great, Fields is great. Everybody wants Justin Fields. And in reality, every one of these teams that's in need of a quarterback, right, they are going to wait to the last possible second until all the other quarterbacks have signed and they're the only team left that didn't sign a quarterback. That's when they're going to go after Fields. I think Fields is like a last-ditch option for these teams that we're listing that need quarterbacks. I think there are some coaches that would like to have Justin Fields, and they could probably say, hey, maybe we could turn this guy into a very serviceable, decent level quarterback. But you don't see it. You put it on the tape. You do not see it with Justin Fields throwing the football. So the Raiders are my pick just because I think they're going to miss out on everybody, and they're not going to have a high enough grade on some of these quarterbacks to trade up and do what's necessary to get to that spot, to take a McCarthy, or have the stomach for it, frankly, to take a J.J. McCarthy. I think he'll end up there. But after every domino falls, that's when Fields will be moved.
Yeah, and for a guy like McCarthy, you got to have great faith in the coaching staff. And I don't think that's a coaching staff that's up for the task of let's develop this kid for 2 or 3 years. I don't think they have the job security to even do that with Antonio Pierce. I'd have to assume, I haven't seen the contract, I have to assume he's the lowest paid head coach in the NFL. Maybe
contract.
Maybe it's Canales in Carolina, but I don't think it would be. I would have paid him more than Pierce.
He got a 5-year contract.
He got a 5-year deal. I would assume, without looking at it annually, Antonio Pierce is the lowest paid head coach in the NFL out of the 32 guys, unless there's someone who is in like the 6th year of a deal they signed 6 years ago that is just making less because of the way the market's changed. Yeah, but I think this Vegas team's got to go veteran. Fields provides a veteran presence. He's been there, chip on his shoulder, with also franchise upside. So I like this fit here. I think that him trying to prove himself, Antonio Pierce trying to prove himself in the same place that is desperate. I mean, Vegas is desperate. Not Vegas, the Raiders organization, desperate for a good team here. Absolutely desperate.
You mentioned Minnesota's kind of out. I would agree. The interdivision, I had brought that up to you yesterday off air. That would make a lot of sense to me if it wasn't in the division, because O'Connell would, I think, have the confidence, one of those offensive coaches that would say, we could fix this kid with our weapons, with our system. He could be a good quarterback. It's obviously not going to happen in the division, though, but I would have liked that if it wasn't. Raiders make the most sense. It's not going to be Atlanta. Atlanta's going to get a veteran here. I can't think of another spot. I really can't for him.
No, because with Pittsburgh out of the mix on everybody, because they're going to go Pickett and Rudolph. I'm trying to think of who reported that.
It's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing what they're doing.
I think it was Mike Florio said yesterday that to somebody commenting about Fields is going to end up in Pittsburgh or Russ is going to end up in Pittsburgh. It was Florio, because I think it was Russell Wilson next team odds. And he responded to the tweet saying, and Pittsburgh was the favorite. He said Pittsburgh's a terrible bet because they're all in on Rudolph and Pickett competition this offseason. Now, while that's absolutely insane to me, it's a 9-win team. I think they have to revamp the entire offense around the quarterback position, regardless of who's going to be there. So Pittsburgh's a mess. I actually do believe that. I think I've done such a 180 on Mike Tomlin and on their organization, because I think there's too much loyalty. There's too many passes and excuses, man. You cannot tell me, oh, well, Tomlin gets to the playoffs every year, but he doesn't have a quarterback. There's a lot of coaches who don't get held to that regard. He gets blown out in a playoff game every year, and we say, well, he doesn't have a quarterback. So we can't keep doing that, and he keeps deciding these are the quarterbacks I'm going to stick with on my roster and let them compete. You can't keep getting the free passes. They haven't won a playoff game since 2017. He's lost with some really talented teams in his career. So I've done a total flip on the entire Steelers organization, which I still think is a great one, but malpractice right now.
I mean, it's kind of the way I feel about the Giants. They're outdated. I mean, the ownership at least is outdated, and I think more so in their front office than the Giants. The Steeler front office is outdated. So this is a terrible move. Listen, I think a lot of this could potentially be the fact that they play in such a brutal conference right now, right? They have a pretty good defense. They have some nice weapons. The offensive line needs work. So, maybe that's what they use their draft pick on. But let's say they're in the NFC, right? And with the defense they have and the weapons they have, if they got Russell Wilson, right, on a veteran minimum contract, which we're going to get to him in a minute, you would say that team can compete for a playoff spot in that NFC. But with the way the AFC is going to be stacked up this season, it almost seems virtually impossible without one of these elite quarterbacks that you can get there, even as good as this defense could be. And they fell off towards the end of the year. They were not as good last season as people make them out to be. So you're right. This franchise needs a complete rebuild. They're old on the defensive side of the ball. They've been injured a lot. It's probably going to happen again. I don't know what this team, they just need a complete reset and rebuild, a complete teardown, which I don't know if they have the stomach for at this point.
Especially when within your division, you have two all-pro level quarterbacks in Cincinnati and Baltimore, who, quite frankly, I think just have better teams all around than what you have, even aside from the quarterback position. And then Cleveland, who, Mike, realistically, Cleveland might have the best roster in the AFC around the quarterback. Yeah. So I understand that's a huge part of it, because, Kansas City's got the best roster in the AFC really because they have Mahomes and then they have a good defense. So, and there's a lot more to it, but conversation for another day. But Pittsburgh is so far behind those teams in the division right now. Those are 4 playoff teams, and they are 4th in the race to a Super Bowl out of those 4 teams. I don't think the coaching is, well, in one instance with Harbaugh, I think he's a better coach than Tomlin. And then in the cases of Taylor and Stefanski, I don't think they're far off either, man. So
there might be only 5 teams they're better than in the entire conference.
There might be. I mean, let's go through it right now, because if you go AFC East, they're better than New England, definitely. Are they better than a fully healthy Jets team? I'll still give it to Pittsburgh.
No.
All right, I will.
I'm not. Do
All
not
right, so we'll say
throw
no.
your Jet bias into this. And it's the opposite of a bias. The Jets are better than them fully healthy.
So Miami, no, they're better than Pittsburgh, and Buffalo's better than Pittsburgh.
So there's only
New
one
England,
team.
And then let's go to the South. Are they better than Indianapolis?
if Indianapolis is healthy, and even last season they were definitely not.
They lost one. It was a 1-game difference
Yeah.
in record, and they had a backup quarterback the whole season.
Yeah,
But Pittsburgh's letting 2 backup quarterbacks compete for the starting job.
obviously not Houston.
I think Minshew would be the best quarterback on that team too.
Yeah, probably.
Houston's not. Jacksonville. Jacksonville sucked this year.
It's really close.
I'm taking Pittsburgh.
I'll take Pittsburgh too.
And then Tennessee. Pittsburgh's better.
Yeah, Pittsburgh and Tennessee.
So
Yeah.
AFC West, Denver, Vegas.
Yeah, that's it.
Not better than the Chargers.
No, if you have a healthy Herbert, they're better than you.
So that's literally 5 teams in the AFC. Great call.
I did it in my head. You didn't
even have to think about it. It's 5 teams in the AFC. You just know the game. You know this stuff before we even process it.
Nobody in their division. 1 in the AFC East, 2 in the South, 2 in the
West.
In the West.
And could you see Sean Payton and the Broncos or the Raiders jumping Pittsburgh this year if Pickett and Rudolph are the quarterbacks? I absolutely can. Jacksonville could easily win. Listen, dude, the Jacksonville
You're going
to
die. You're going to die on the Jacksonville Hill.
It's starting to come back, man, because I think they could just make a run right through that division next
Josh
year.
Allen, 17.5 sacks. They're bringing him back.
I mean, damn. All right.
Possibly.
So 5 teams better than Pittsburgh. Let's move on to Russ here. We mentioned him. I have no idea where he's going to end up, but so fascinating. This guy 3 years ago was one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Massive trade to Denver. He absolutely sucks now, but he kind of showed some positives. You were on the Denver train during the season, and he's going to go play somewhere for $1 million. $1 million. He's going to play somewhere. That is a 3rd round quarterback's price tag for Russell Wilson to play somewhere.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, always, man.
He didn't play it down on his 5-year, $260 million extension, correct?
No, he didn't.
So do they owe him all of that? Well, how does that
work? No, they
owe
him. They just owe him the guarantees without the injury thing. They owe him, or no, because they put him on they benched him at the end of the year, so he couldn't get injured, so that they didn't have to pay him that. I think they have to pay him $125 million of it because that was the guarantee.
Okay.
And that's what they owe him. And then they also paid him, I think, $80 million from his Seattle contract.
Christ. So it's arguably one of the worst trades of all time. It's
probably easily the worst trade of all time.
And then it's the worst extension of all time.
Yeah, it's the worst for every single thing. And the worst office built ever in the history of the world, giving him an office.
It's unreal. And yet, he wasn't terrible last season. And if you put him in a bridge spot in the right situation, I think the team can win 8 or 9 games. And my team, Kevin, it's simple. It's easy. We're just replacing. We're just going to replace everybody. So I had Kirk in Atlanta. I'm putting Russ on the Vikings. The Vikings will not get their quarterback in this draft. And they will pick up Russ for a season. They'll try and win here with they're going to bring back Jefferson. They're going to pay him a boatload of money there. They'll try and win next season with Russ, and they'll be actively looking for their quarterback. But it'll be Russ in Minnesota.
Yeah, I like Minnesota as well. So we were 3 for 3 on those. We didn't even discuss them with each
other.
Although,
here's my problem now. The teams that I'm yesterday I texted you, I said the Giants are going to draft JJ McCarthy. And I know we're going to draft, but it's gonna come back in a minute. And now I don't think they're gonna do that. I think they're gonna take a receiver. But now all of these teams that we listed here are potential teams that can move up and go get McCarthy.
Yeah.
So it's like, somebody's going to get McCarthy. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be Denver? Maybe Denver. Maybe my prediction is Denver gets McCarthy. Okay, never mind. It works. Because I'm like, who's going to take him? Who's left here?
Then that's a trade-up spot,
McCarthy.
too. That's a trade-up spot as well. I'm trying to find this tweet about the Broncos general manager. I thought I sent it to you, but I did not.
While you look for that, you want to hear something petrifying?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to hear something petrifying?
Yes, I do want to hear something petrifying.
So I read this report that if Arizona got blown away by an offer, they would potentially move down, and that would most likely be for a quarterback, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine if Marvin Harrison Jr. fell to the Chargers at 5 with Harbaugh? Could you imagine that?
Yeah,
that would be dangerous.
I'm thinking it could possibly go down that way, man.
It could. Let's say the Giants were in love with McCarthy, right? Just as the example, because you're not moving down it's really an example for Arizona because you're not moving down that far and you're still going to get a number 1 wide receiver, right? And the grades are kind of like on Odunze and Neighbors and those guys, and you're like, we'll take 2 second-round picks to move down here and just take Neighbors, let's just say. And the Chargers sit there and they're like, yep, we're not going to trade out of this. We're not going to take Joe Alt. We're going to take the best player in the draft, arguably.
Yeah, easily the best player in the draft. And I think you don't even have to say for McCarthy. I think there's teams that would trade up to that 4 spot for Alt. I think there's teams that would trade to that 4 spot potentially for Bowers. So it's a fascinating draft after the 3rd pick. I really believe the top 3 picks are locked in. I don't think there's any chance it goes other than Williams, May, Daniels to the teams that are slotted there right now. And you know what? If a team did trade into 3, they're taking Daniels.
So you're locked in on the fact that May's at 2.
Oh, I mean, I've rarely been this confident ever about a 2nd pick than I am with Drake May. There is no doubt in my mind that Drake May is a Washington quarterback. I think that he might, I'm not even saying this as a joke. I think he might already have the playbook and have spoken to Kingsbury and I think he's locked in. And I think Caleb is the same exact way in Chicago. I think him and I'm forgetting his name. Oh my God. Shane Waldron. I think that him and Waldron have already spoken. Him and Eberflus have already spoken, and they know that he's the quarterback in Chicago. I got that vibe from him at the combine the whole time. He knows he's the top pick, Williams. Yeah. He already knows it. He knows Fields is out. And I think May probably has the same deal with Washington. Now, Washington might not jump the gun. They might want to continue their scouting a little bit. We still have what is it today, March 5th? So we have a month. We have about 52 days, 51, 52 days to the draft. So they're not going to jump the gun just yet in giving May a playbook, but he's going to be the 2nd pick. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. Now I'm curious if they're going to bring back Brissett maybe, if they're going to start May on day 1. How do they approach that? And the same thing for New England, who I think is going to sit Daniels for the first year of Mayo's tenure and bring in a veteran, let Daniels get acclimated to the system, the league, see how their system works before you throw him in with that absolute disaster of an offensive coordinator and coaching staff that Mayo brought in. Yeah. Probably the worst staff in the league. I cannot believe.
Is that going to be a place where quarterbacks go to die, or a quarterback would go to die? Based on the talent level on offense and the coaching staff.
I think so. They're going to get better on offense. I think they're going to spend like 50, 60 million on the offensive side of the ball next week. So I think they're going to I think they'll get Calvin Ridley.
Now, let's say they don't. Let's say they don't make, drastic changes on offense. It's like a Belichick offense, free agency on offense that we've seen the past couple of years. And do you think a guy like Daniels says, hey, guys, thanks, but no thanks. I don't want to be drafted by you?
I don't think he has the leverage.
You don't think
Daniels?
So?
I don't think a guy who's a 5-year starter, transfer, had one above average year in college, and he won the Heisman.
Yeah.
And I love Daniels. I really do. I don't think a guy in that spot has the leverage to say, hey, I'm not going to play here, because who even wants that guy in a trade? That I know, the Giants would jump right in on it, and Denver would jump in, and Minnesota, but realistically, that's a terrible look for a guy of his status being the 3rd pick. Some people probably have McCarthy over him. I don't know. I don't think Daniels could do that. And okay. I think Mayo probably presents in a way that's enjoyable enough and trustful enough. I've heard him speak a few times since he got hired. And I think if I sat in the room with that guy, I would trust his vision and trust the conversation we had. He gives me that vibe. But yeah, I think the top 3 picks are locked in, back to that original point. And I think the draft starts at 4. This is the same way I felt in 2021 when San Fran traded up for the 3rd pick. Trey Lance was a lock.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Lawrence, Wilson, Lance. Draft starts at 4. Really, that year was an easy one too. Now I'm just going on a tangent because that year they posted this video, I think it was Pro Football Focus, of Matt Rule like going down the whiteboard.
Yeah.
And he was like, first pick's going to be Lawrence, second pick's Wilson, third pick is, and they had the 9th pick. So third pick is Lance, 4th is Pitts, 5th is Chase, 6 is going to be Waddle, and 7 Sewell. 8 was who was 8? Who went after Sewell that year? I don't remember. Had to have been a bust. And then they were up and they took JC Horn, but he wrote that all out on the whiteboard like 2 weeks before the draft. And I was
really
like,
he had it down,
Yeah.
1 through 9.
I had the first 8 picks right in my mock draft.
Did you really?
If I have it right, that means 32 GMs and coaches have it right too.
Weird year, man. Weird year for scouting.
Me with no sources knew the tough pick was the 5 pick. Was Cincinnati taking Sewell or Chase? But if you knew Chase, you knew the first 8 picks. Who was the 8th pick that year? And then Baker, while I'm doing this nonsense, we're saying Baker's back in Tampa, right?
Baker's back in Tampa. Yeah, let's get back to real NFL. Tell me the team, and then let me see if I can guess the draft pick.
Yeah. Oh, no, you know where I screwed up?
What?
The Panthers had 8. And then 9 was Surtain.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought that was Surtain's year. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because Horn went before him, and I was like about to explode on draft night. Like, why did Horn go first? And Horn's a good player, actually, just hasn't stayed healthy.
Yeah, Pat Surtain.
All right, so Baker's back in Tampa, right?
Back in Tampa. Daniel Jones, Geno Smith contract.
All right,
easy.
So let's dive in here to these free agents. It's actually a good free agent class. I'm just going to throw one name to you because I'm wondering if this guy gets out there. Chris Jones, I don't think he makes it to Monday's tampering period. No. And if he did, I think it's just an extended period for Kansas City to sign him.
Yeah, it'd be bad. I mean, you got to bring him back. I mean, he's your defense. He's your guy. He's your leader. And he's the best defensive tackle in football right now. I mean, I think it's fair to say he's surpassed Aaron Donald. He's that dominant.
So we will both agree that he is significantly more important for the Chiefs' future than L'Jarius Sneed.
Yes.
Okay. Even with the age difference, I totally agree.
Sneed, it seems like Sneed's going to be sent off for a second-round pick.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the vibe you get from these insiders.
All right. So let's talk here. One more. I'm going to throw one more to you before I go into the offensive line conversation that we've been having the last few weeks. Christian Wilkins.
Yeah.
Is this really the player that he's said to be?
You know, I understand that there are some people that believe that he is overrated. I'm not one of these guys. I'm a Christian Wilkins fan. He's great. I mean, when you have a guy that's able to rush the passer from the inside, from the interior defensive line the way he is, you can't let that guy go, in my opinion. So I would say whoever signs him in free, he's going to get paid a boatload of cash. I just read that the Browns are interested. I mean, imagining him and Myles Garrett on the same defensive line is pretty scary. So I'm a Christian Wilkins guy. I know there are some that believe he is overrated, but he's a freak athlete at, a position where you don't expect it.
This is just a fantasy conversation. This is not a real life football conversation.
Yeah.
As Gabe chimes in. And by the way, Gabe did throw one of these on. We do have to get Gabe into a nighttime StreamYards live.
I would love that.
That's on the agenda for sure. Playbook's absolutely dominating on Instagram. I mean, they've gone up about 400 followers.
It's crazy.
Since the NFL Championship weekend. That's been huge. Most followed account now in the BTO tree.
They surpassed us.
Really great job by
Gabe.
He's the man. But Gabe likes Christian Wilkins a lot, and that usually means Christian Wilkins is a good player. Does the Giants' new defensive coordinator run a 3-4 or a 4-3?
I'm pretty sure a 4-3, but I could be 100%.
Because Wink ran a 3-4.
It's the opposite of Wink, so it's a 4-3.
So it's a 4-3. Okay. Because Wink ran the 3-4, which of course, 2 DNs, 2 tackles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sorry. That's what we're running now. 4-3.
That's the 4-3.
2 DNs, 2 tackles. Previously in Winks, it's 2 DNs, nose tackle, one tackle.
Uh-huh.
How about we get the Clemson guys back here in New York? And I would love to watch that just because I love that team. I loved watching that team at Clemson. I loved watching that defensive line. Clelin Ferrell, rest in peace to his career. He's still alive, though.
Thought you were about to say he's dead. I'm like, did I miss that?
He is alive and well, but his career is not.
Yeah, all right.
After being another casualty of the John Gruden, Mike Mayock experience in Oakland/Vegas. What a disaster that was. Did you notice nobody's even hired Mayock to make a mock draft again? Because they were like, what the hell? Someone has to go back and look at his like player rankings and stuff, man, from previously and see if he was that bad.
When he's dead, we need his family to like release that.
No, I'm
you
saying,
know, like maybe how artists like release like their music
Mayock,
Mayock
releases
draft lists.
I'm saying the old when he was on NFL Network.
Oh, okay.
Go back.
Okay. No,
man, you jumped right to when he's dead. His family has to release the files. What's wrong with you?
A lot.
Whatever.
Anyway,
but
you
I'd
said
like to see the Giants. I'd like to see the Giants go get Christian Wilkins here and put him back next to Dexter Lawrence. That would just be a ton of fun. Not going to happen.
You want to hear the problem with that? As fun as that would be, maybe if Azeez Ojulari was able to stay healthy and be productive in a contract year, and the Giants didn't need to go out and spend a lot on another edge rusher, maybe we could do that. But Azeez Ojulari, another Dave Gettleman casualty, a guy that is just the most inconsistent, hurt player of all time. Now that Giants need another edge on the other side of Kayvon. So I would love Wilkins, believe me, but
and also
can't have it.
The even larger problem than Ojulari is a team that was second to last in offense, only in front of the historically bad New York Jets, should not be spending $20 million in free agency annually on another defensive tackle.
Yeah.
So we can move past that fantasy. But we got to talk offensive line here, man.
Here we go.
In free agency. We have to talk offensive line. And here comes my big time fan pet peeve for the Twitter fans, the casual who just clearly does not watch football, does not follow what happens in this league. Tyron Smith, only good free agent lineman. I'm going to say that right now. Only guy I think can produce out of this free agency class that you can count on to produce. You know why that is, Mike? Because good teams don't let good offensive linemen walk out the door. Bad teams don't let good offensive linemen walk out the door. When is the last time a really great all-pro level offensive lineman hit the market? When's the last time a 49ers offensive lineman who walked out the door or a Bill Belichick offensive lineman who walked out the door went somewhere new and was just as good? It does not happen. I've never seen it happen. Nate Solder, Laken Tomlinson, we were just talking about it, our misery here in New York with those guys. Mike McGlinchey over in Denver sucked. These guys don't leave and have prosperous careers after they go. The guys that go to San Francisco, that go to Green Bay, Philadelphia, New England, end up having terrific careers there. But if your team has been looking for offensive line for 10 years, trust me, you're not fixing it in the 2024 free agency class with whatever random guard played a playoff game last year for the Lions or the Buccaneers, and you think they're going to fit in seamlessly next to the crap your team has put out every week for 10 years. It's not going to happen. With your terrible coaches, with your terrible offensive line, with your terrible quarterback and passing game and offensive coordinators, you're not finding good linemen and rebuilding your entire line and franchise in this 2024 class. Not going to happen. Go to the draft, build through that for a few years, and maybe find a coach that can coach up a few linemen and make your team productive and prosperous for years to come. That's where I'll just end it and let you go.
Sounds a little personal, but it is in your case and in my case with the teams that we both root for. So I applaud you for that. Yeah. You make some great points. You know, we're talking about both of our teams possibly grabbing some linemen here that, you know, to rebuild this offensive line, like you mentioned, not going to happen in free agency. It's just not. So you have a lot in this draft class where you feel good about a few tackles in the first round. There's going to be, I mean, what, in your draft guide, how many in the top 50 were offensive tackles? Was it 8 or 12?
It was 8 offensive tackles in the top 50, and I have it here. I think it's 7 in the top 20.
Wow.
Maybe 6 in the top 20 because Mims dropped to 21.
Right. So it's incredible that, we do see this where these offensive linemen hit the market and they stink elsewhere. And you make a point about Tyron Smith. He's been banged up,
Yeah.
And if Dallas is letting him walk out the building, that's telling. That is very telling, because I think of any team the past decade or so, to at least, and it might just hit closer to home watching Dallas so much and following Dallas, is they're arguably the best with offensive linemen, developing them, drafting them, signing them, re-signing them. So with Smith, they're letting Smith walk out the door. He's been banged up, so even that might be a risk.
I'm going to also just say, I'm going to walk back one statement I said in my rant. I think Onwenu is also a good bet to be a really productive tackle. 26 years old. I think the only reason he's really in the open market is because it's a totally new regime trying to start fresh. I don't think they want to hand out any $20 million contracts to anybody that's not a quarterback right now. So that's another guy that I do like a lot, and I love his versatility at guard and tackle. That's always that's actually my number one trait that I look for in the draft, whether or not I think a guy's a good pick. Can they play multiple positions? Obviously, besides just are they good at playing tackle?
Right.
But
also another thing, and this is kind of brought up because we were talking offline about the Jets needing a new offensive line, basically 3 new starters. Day one, and then
3 new starters and really 4 backups.
Right. So, listen, I played football on a very low scale, okay? But I understand, offensive line and team bonding and team building. Continuity with offensive linemen is so important. It's very difficult to just throw an offensive line together in 1 year and say, yeah, these guys are going to play well. Whether they're drafted or they're signed or both, a mixture of both. It's difficult to have a brand new set of 5 guys to come in there. When you see, when they do the starting lineups, right? And you see this with the Giants all the time. They're always banged up in the offensive line. They're like, oh, this is the 8th new offensive line combination and it's 10 games in. That's a problem. That's not only you're losing good guys, but you're losing guys that have sort of built, some continuity throughout training camp. Now those guys are, it's very difficult because on the offensive line, everybody knows each other's assignments. You have to. And you need to know how everybody's moving around. So it's not good when you're just throwing guys together in one offseason saying, okay, guys, you need to protect the Hall of Fame quarterback that's coming off an Achilles injury and is up there in age. And we have a, big time target on our back because we need to win at least a playoff game here.
My philosophy too with the line is you draft tackles and centers and you sign guards. I think guard is a free agency position because it's out of the 5 spots, in my opinion, easiest 2 to plug and play are guards. Centers, I like homegrown centers. I think homegrown centers have a much better success rate. Good centers don't walk out the door. Same thing with tackles. Draft tackles, though, because Green Bay, I'm going to use Green Bay as an example. As good of an offensive line building team as we've seen over the last decade, them and Philadelphia have been the real standard over the last decade. Green Bay drafts tackles. Guys such as Zach Tom, guys like Elton Jenkins, tackles who they move to guard. David Bakhtiari, homegrown guy. Billy Turner, I know Billy Turner, what a disaster now, but Billy Turner was a homegrown Packer and played tackle at a pretty high level for them for 2 or 3 years. Draft tackles, because a lot of failed tackles are very good guards, and that's why I'd like to see Evan Neal and Ike Ekwonu get kicked into guard this year for Carolina and the Giants, because those 2 guys are real talented blockers. We saw it in college. We saw it in power conferences, but I need to see them at guard before I say they're busts, because I thought especially Ekwonu had really good position versatility, and those guys normally never fail.
Yeah. And I think we're going to see that with Neal in the Giants, at least. I think they're going to try and draft the tackle at some point in this draft. Hopefully move Neal over because, it might not be the greatest positional value, but you draft, these tackles at 6 and 7 in the same exact draft back to back. And you think, okay, these guys are going to be bookends for us, and they're not. At least you get something out of them if they're at guard. So that would be nice. Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about some of these tackles in this draft, I mean, you love Joe Alt. There's a lot.
Man.
There's a lot
of guys here. I love every single offensive lineman in my top 50.
That's this Jackson Powers guy. I'm saying his name right?
Yeah, Jackson Powers Johnson.
Yeah, Jackson Powers Johnson.
Last name.
Guard and center.
He's awesome because I think this is what I say. You can see he's going high in my last draft. I got him at 16. When's the last time a center went top 20?
Honestly, Frank Ragnow, right? He played both.
Yeah.
He played both center and guard.
And
in comp there.
The reason I say, he's going that high, I just told you, precision versatility. That is my biggest trait for good linemen. Can they play multiple positions? Because my logic behind it, I don't know if this would be agreed upon universally or not, but my logic behind it is if he sucks at one position, he should be good at one of the others. And also, you just have a plug-and-play guy for 3 positions. Sometimes you get a guy that could play 4, that could play both guard spots, both tackle spots. I think Onwenu's one of those guys. But you draft a plug-and-play for 4 positions, 3 with Powers Johnson when injuries come around. Because maybe you have 2 really good centers on the roster, and that's where your best depth is. So you say, hey, Jackson, we need you to play right guard today because we're down to our 4th on the depth chart. It's a practice squad guy. He's not ready to go, and we're going to kick the center up. And he's going to say, all right, I know how to do it. I know how to play it. I know the scheme. I know the blocking formation. So I can go there. So Powers Johnson, I love it. He's my 33rd player, but he moved up from 38 to 33 from the first edition to the second edition. And I'm going 16 right now because I think he grades a Pro Bowl guard and center. That's an awesome player. That's a guy that the Giants should be trying to move back up in the draft to get. I want to talk about the Giants and the tag deadline here with Xavier McKinney and Saquon Barkley. What are your thoughts there?
I think McKinney and they're getting Barkley Barkley was a respect thing, and they're not going to do it 2 years in a row. Whatever. That's fine. And that we'll talk about that in a minute. McKinney, to me, I kind of see, I wasn't a big Xavier McKinney guy. That thing with the ATV and getting hurt last season bugged me a little bit. Yeah. I didn't like his answers for it, but he bounced back he was one of the best safeties in the league this year. He played every single snap. He was fantastic. He graded out very well, and he's 24 years old. So, you look at the really good franchises in the league. They don't let 24-year-old studs walk out the building. I understand positional value with safeties, and I even read, if you're not paying a running back, then you're probably not paying a safety either. I think they should pay McKinney. I do.
So
I think they should pay him. And they didn't tag him. They can still sign him. I would probably pay him, though.
I'm anti-safety because I think there's so many out there. So many good quality safeties out there. I'm not anti-safety. I'm anti-paying a safety. I think safety might be the most important position on the defense because if you suck at safety, you're getting killed all day over the middle. You're getting killed over the top. But if you're really good at safety, it takes away that third of the field, down the field, and you can sink everybody down. I would not pay these guys, though. That's why I think the Jamal Adams trade, which has been in the news a lot because he's just been released. I think that trade was equally as bad as the Russell Wilson trade, but Seattle made up for it with the Rush trade because of the quantity they got and the quality of the picks. But I wouldn't pay McKinney here. It's a tough spot, though, because
you bring up the switch in defensive coordinator. Now look at Wink's defense. It's not as cornerback reliant. You need athletes out there to play on an island because he's blitzing so much, and the safeties are, a little bit more important in his defense. Now he's gone. Now you're back to a more traditional defense. Does that change things for you where, maybe we do let McKinney walk. We're going to go out there. We're going to draft the corner position. Maybe we pay a corner to go along with Deonte Banks, who we just drafted in the first round, who had a pretty solid rookie season for a corner. I'm almost like asking you, does that make sense? Because I would understand that reasoning, even though you don't want to let a 24-year-old walk out the building. Maybe the positional value with the switch and defensive scheme makes a little bit more sense of why they're letting him go.
I think you need to have a plan at the position too, right? So you have to go into this offseason saying we got, maybe it's Jason Pinnock who you're saying, all right, we feel good about this guy, but safety or running back or quarterback, I mean, I don't feel comfortable with bad teams that have been bad for a while letting 24, 25-year-old Pro Bowlers that are homegrown leave. I just don't feel good with that. So that's
Right.
where in this case I'm a little different. But I do also agree with you that I don't love McKinney's act. I didn't love the antics from this past year. I thought that the quad thing was I almost said disturbing. I think that's a reach.
That's a reach. Yeah.
But you get what I'm saying. Like, it was concerning.
He's made some comments too, before anything was decided, when it seemed like the transition tag was going to be what the Giants placed on him. You had him on, on social media ranting a little bit, and there's a difference. You don't see that with a guy like Saquon Barkley. And we know how, guys' attitudes and the way they act off the field matters. We talk about traditional organizations. We talked about the Steelers before, Giants, old school. I'm sure that did not make Mr. Mara happy seeing that. And obviously the situation last year when they're in the middle of a playoff run and, your best safety is hurt. I don't know. That could also play a part in it.
Yeah. So what is this? What's going to happen with Barkley? Is he going to be gone?
I think he's going to be gone.
That's weird to think about. I think he wants the Giants.
I do too. And I think ultimately what will happen is he'll get a contract offer from the Texans or with our luck, the Eagles. And he'll go back to the Giants and say, here, this is what they offered me. Would you like to match it? And the Giants will say no. Shane, it's obvious what Shane wants to do. Shane is not allocating 12 to $14 million a year to a running back. I am the same way. I didn't want him in the draft. I wanted Sam Darnold.
Bad picks, dude. You want to talk about bad picks?
I wanted Sam Darnold. If you didn't want Sam Darnold, trade back a little pick. Take Nelson. Take Bradley Chubb. Take Denzel Ward. Please, for the love of God, don't take the running back. And they did it. And, Hardline had posted a video of me saying, goodbye, Barkley, get out. And it's not that I hate Barkley. It's that I've been right for 6 years, and people have called me an idiot for saying, no, you weren't right about Barkley. But yes, I was, because the pick never made sense. Picking a running back at 2 will never make sense. If Jerry Jones can do it over again, he wouldn't pick Zeke at 2. He'd pick Jalen Ramsey. So please, for the love of God, don't tell me I'm wrong here. It was a bad selection. He was a great Giant, a great guy, but it was a bad move, and it set the franchise back years.
Yeah, that was the beginning. Literally the first pick of Gettleman's tenure ended his time with the team and just turned it into a real dark age period for the Giants, because that pick was awful, man. In a league that's not paying running backs any money, in a league that's completely devalued the position and valued everything else. It is, I hate to say it because I love a great running back, it's the 11th most important position out of your 11 starters when it comes to building a roster. Yep. That is the 11th position you should be worrying about, because if you have all the other ones figured out, it's a dependent position. The passing game has to be good. The offensive line has to be good. It's dependent on the rest of the players in the offense. That's why I like, that's why the important positions are the independent positions that can do things on their own, that can impact the game on their own without the help of others. Left tackle, quarterback, for the most part. Well, all 5 linemen can essentially impact the game on their own. They're independent positions. And I think to an extent receiver is, because you see guys like Garrett Wilson go for 1,000 yards in years where their quarterbacks and offensive lines and passing games are horrible. And you've seen Mike Evans do it a couple times with bad quarterback play. So running back's the most dependent position in the entire offense, maybe on the entire team, offense, defense, special teams. And it stinks because I feel the same way as you, man. Barkley is a great ambassador for your franchise.
100%.
He seems like an awesome guy, an all-time talent out of the draft. I'll always have a soft spot for him because of how much I love the draft, because that was the second year I had been watching the draft and making my top 50s, and Barkley was number one on that list of the top 50. And just an awesome player at Penn State. He's exceeded every off-the-field expectation you possibly can, but the Giants have failed him and their own organization at every stop with literally every decision they've made with him. From drafting him, that failed him, it failed the team. From giving it, really just taking him to the woodshed in a contract last year, he failed himself with that. And the personnel they've put around him and the coaching staffs he's had have been so bad. It was nice that he gets a playoff win, but let's close the chapter here on a great Giant who I think is always welcome back, no matter how he leaves here.
Yeah.
Always welcome back. Will always be remembered as the bright spot in the worst stretch in franchise history. And move on.
I can't see it like, and you can see it like that as an outsider and as a fan. He's part of the era that I dread the most thinking about as a New York Giants fan. And you nailed it on the head. I mean, if you can have a guy, if you any sport, if your face of your franchise is like Saquon Barkley off the field and even on the field a little bit to an extent, you sign up for it 100%. He's, a class act. But if your offense is reliant, and people have said this to me, well, if they could get him, on a cheap deal. No, if your offense is reliant on the running back playing well, you've built your offense backwards. In today's game, your offense is built backwards. It needs to be done up front. Your running back needs to be good because your offensive line is good. And there's a solid pass game with really good receivers. They did it the wrong way. Dave Gettleman does not get enough credit for how bad of an executive he was. One of the worst we've seen in this town. One of the worst we've seen in the entire league. Okay, Jet fans want to complain about the executives they've seen over the years. Go look at Dave Gettleman. The only two things he brought us were Andrew Thomas, who you love to death, and Dexter Lawrence. And that wasn't even until he left where we saw Dex turn into the best of what he became. So that's my rant on the Giants. I'm sorry.
No, Mike, never say sorry, man. Just a horrible, painful decade of Giant football. And you know what? I do kind of get what you're saying with you can't associate Barkley when you're on the side of the line that we are with that pick. We're in the minority with that pick, man. At least around here, being in New York, we're in the minority with that pick because the fans fall in love with the team so quickly and so easily. They fall in love with the great player, especially when we have nothing to watch.
Yeah.
And that first home run that he hit against Jacksonville in the first game, the fans loved him ever since. And they said the whole bad draft pick thing, they were all ready to just pitchforks in hand to go after the people who said bad draft pick. If he turned out, like Adrian Peterson's a golden example. Mm-hmm. That is a prospect who turned into one of the 5 greatest running backs of all time, had a real durable career. What do the Vikings have to show for that?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing, man. So the pick was horrible. I'm ready to see Barkley in a winning situation.
As am I.
I'm ready to see him. And I think he might have a really hard time leaving the Giants, but I think Shane is going to be the one that really forces his hand to go, and not in a bad way, just in a way of, hey, this is not the situation anymore. This is not the place for you at this point.
We're rebuilding. Get the hell out.
Exactly. We got to go in a different direction, and quite frankly, so does he.
Yeah.
So go to a place like Houston where you're able to thrive, able to be great, run behind a good enough line, play with a great quarterback, good young offensive staff, good receivers.
Kevin, the problem is you're going to pay him like he's the number one guy that's taking the ball, 25, 30 times a game. And by the end of the contract, if it's a 4-year contract, you're going to need that guy, that pick-me-up guy, that Pollard to Zeke by the end of it. And when you're paying a running back that much money, that is an absolute killer, because then you're also wasting a draft pick on this running back that now has to possibly wasting a draft pick on this running back that needs to come in for your running backs making $14 million a year. Cannot happen. Cannot happen on a winning organization.
No, it can't, Mike. That's a great point. So Saquon, interesting market. The running back position is interesting in this free agency because you have Derrick Henry available. He will be gone from Tennessee. They kind of already did their farewell to two situations going completely different directions. So Derrick Henry, I think, feels to me as if he's a lock to end up in Baltimore. I think that they went after him at the deadline. That's been said by Baltimore beat reporters. That was a guy they checked in on at the deadline.
Yeah.
I think he'll go. That he's already gotten his payday. He reset the running back market. He's had great endorsement deals. I think that he can take the discount to go to Baltimore, 3-year deal, maybe making $8.5, $9 million a year, which you'll take Derrick Henry on if you're Baltimore, and just go pound the rock there for a few years, try to win a ring, playing some playoff games. And then you have Austin Eckler, who absolutely sucks, Austin Eckler, I can't even do a rant about Austin Eckler because I think he's just one of the worst players in the league. So overrated because of fantasy football. But you have Tony Pollard available, and a lot of good running backs here available. And I'm interested to see if the market actually is in favor of them this year, or if it's as bad as it was last year.
It's going to be as bad as it was last year. And I think, and as a fan of the Giants, who are probably going to be looking for a new running back, I'm looking at the bottom. I want a 3-back situation. I want a 3-back situation. Eric Gray, they just drafted. Get me one of these cheap guys here. Let's do this thing. Come on. Let's go.
I have a slight issue with that.
Obviously.
I have a slight issue with that.
What?
I think running backs need 15, 20 touches to get into a rhythm. And if you're not giving it to them consistently, I think they all just stink. And the run game is, but maybe, you give first drive, we're going to give you all touch, make the most of it, and you might get the rest of the game. Like that kind of committee I'm in favor of.
Right.
But I think Devin Singletary is going to be getting 15, 20 touches a game for the Giants next year.
Would love it. Absolutely.
And he had a nice year in Houston.
Him and Eric Gray, man. Let's go. Breida's the third. Fine.
I think you need two guys that complement each other.
That's fine.
If you can't draft the home, I'm all in favor of drafting in the second round the Nick Chubbs of the world, Breece Hall.
100%.
Kyron Williams is kind of an outlier as a 4th-round pick, undersized guy, undersized third down back, turns into a superstar. But I'm all in favor of those guys. So get your superstar there, Jonathan Taylor being one of them. But if you look at the free agency list, I think that if you have a guy, who do the Giants? Who's the second-year guy for the Giants that they took in the 5th round?
Eric Gray.
Eric Gray, yeah, who had a nice camp last year. I remember. I don't know if he did anything during the season. Truthfully,
they fumbled a lot in the punt return. About it. And then take him off a punt return.
So
by getting bullied by Daboll on the sideline.
Like I don't know. Yeah, he's a huge bully, dude. I don't know totally what his skill set is, but get a complimentary guy. Maybe it's Devin Singletary. Maybe. I think a team can get Tony Pollard for like $6.5 million.
He's terrible.
Dalvin Cook.
No, I'm good on Cook, man. I'm good on. I'll stick with Breida. I'm good with Breida.
I tell you, the first running back I would go to in free agency, I'm not even kidding, if I needed a complimentary back for a committee, is Ezekiel Elliott. Because he's going to block for you. He's going to do well at the goal line. And you just know what you're getting for $2.5, $3 million. You know exactly what you're getting.
You want to hear a funny story about Zeke? It has nothing to do with Zeke, but it's like about Zeke. So it has nothing to do with meeting Zeke or talking to Zeke. It's just about Zeke. So I'm a sophomore on the varsity football team, okay? And my defensive line coach is a scary, scary dude, is also the running back coach. So I don't know how, but I ended up chopping about the NFL with him. And he's like, you know that Zeke guy? I'm like, yeah, I know Zeke. He's like, he's not just a great runner, Mike. That guy can block. He can block as a back. So I've never forgotten. You just mentioned he can block for you. I've never forgot that Zeke is he's great blocking too.
Do you remember the Hard Knocks with the Raiders with Gruden? And they just got Antonio Brown. And the first clip, he's like, They're in the room with the skill position guys. I think it was the receivers. And Hunter Renfro's sitting in there. And Gruden's just like, all right, let me show you here. Superstar guy from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And everyone's like thinking, oh, we just traded for AB yesterday. Like he's like, Le'Veon Bell. What? And then he's like, what does Le'Veon Bell do well? And then someone in the room's like, run the ball. And then the guy's like, catch passes. He goes, he blocks. And he just starts showing these clips of him blocking defensive tackles for like 5 minutes. It was one of the
It's important though. I mean, it's important,
but it was one of the most boring hard knock segments of all time. But
classic Gruden though.
I'm trying to think of of who the other player was. There's a player that went to some random group of 5 college or whatever, FBS, whatever. And he keeps saying the college over and over again. He's like, you know who this guy is? Oh no, it was Danny Woodhead. It was Danny Woodhead.
Oh, I've seen the memes about Woodhead. I've seen the memes about Woodhead. I didn't see that clip about Bell.
Oh yeah, okay. So there's the Gruden video about Woodhead, and he's like, watch this, Danny Woodhead. You know, and then he'll be like, it'll be like Josh Jacobs. So, Josh, you know where he went to school? It's like, no, coach. Chadron State. Chadron State. You know what they teach at Chadron State? Like, no, coach. They teach you how to block. And then there's just Woodhead lighting linebackers up for 5 or 6 minutes. And then every time he'll show one clip, block Woodhead. And then it's like Henry Ruggs. Hey, Henry. You know, where he goes, hey, Henry, you know where Danny went to college? Then he forgot already. Chadron State. You know what they teach at Chadron State? How to block. They teach how to block. Another block.
I can just imagine like Jacobs and Ruggs and all these guys in this room and AB sitting here listening to Gruden talk. Like, this guy's a freaking psychopath. Who am I playing for right now?
Yeah, Gruden's nuts, man. I mean, that whole team. Who would have thought we would have talked about the Mayock Gruden era twice today?
Yeah.
But that whole team was a disaster. Remember Damon Arnett? They took Damon Arnett,
oh my God.
Alabama
Did he
corner.
get arrested or something?
Yeah, for like the 5th time since they drafted him. They took Damon Arnett, Alabama corner, in the first round. I remember when they took him in the first round. I didn't even have him in my top 50. I probably heard about him once that offseason. And the whole table at the draft, I watch on NFL Network, so it's Jeremiah, Rich Eisen. They're like, oh, what the hell? Oh, my God. And they're all going nuts. And Jeremiah is like, I had him as an undrafted free agent. He didn't say that, but it was like that. It was that blown away. And everyone's sitting there like, what the heck just happened? And then like a month or two into the season, Damon Arnett, everything's going terribly with the Raiders. Antonio Brown froze his feet. He lit Gruden up on that phone call, got released. Now he's on the Patriots, are the best team in the league. And then I think he left the Patriots because he was accused of some sort of sexual assault. And then Belichick just got rid of him, and he didn't play for the rest of the year because he played that one game against Miami. Anyways, I digress. Damon Arnett from Alabama, he posted a video with an assault rifle, and he was like, I'm going to kill John Gruden. I'm going to kill John Gruden. And then they cut him, and just like, what were you guys, how did you evaluate these players?
Oh, it's crazy. Is that the same draft as DeAndre Baker, who ended up getting falsely accused of robbing somebody at gunpoint? Remember that with DeAndre Baker?
Dude,
do you remember that?
Yeah, it took me a minute to realize who that was. That was the Dexter Lawrence draft.
Yeah, that's the
what was that, 2019?
Yeah, that's Jones, Dexy, Sexy Dexy, and Baker.
2019 NFL draft. Yep.
They went 1 for 3.
Baker was in the Baker. No, I don't think Arnett's in this.
He's not in that draft.
No, he's not.
But that's nuts.
Curious here. Who's the Giants didn't have a second round pick because they traded up with it?
Yeah, they traded up to go get Baker.
Nice.
That's another master class by Dave Gettleman.
Worst pick. This is a fun fact, and it's an objective answer. This is a subjective question, typically subjective, but this one's objective. Worst pick of the 2019 draft class.
Oh God, is that the Farrell?
No,
that's not the Clinton Farrell draft.
It is, but he's not the worst pick because he's still in the league.
Oh God. Oh, who is it?
Ja'Kai Polite, pick 68, New York Jets, cut
Right.
3 months later at training camp.
Yes, I remember that.
Okay. I remember that first round. Everyone was, every Jets fan on Twitter, because this is Jets Nation on Twitter, man. I hate them so much. They were all, Polite. This is a 10.5 sack guy, possible defensive rookie of the year. First round of cuts come through. Everyone's like, what the hell?
It just shows how much the casual fan doesn't know. I mean, even us. I mean, we tend to think you more so. We tend to think we know football, and it's like compared to these guys, it's like,
oh yeah, but at least as I said before, I said with me picking the first 8 picks of that draft, I wasn't impressed that Matt Rule was able to, because he should be able to. If I could pick the first 8, you should be able to get the whole first round right.
Yeah,
but at least we are. Drafting. At least we're also Gruden. At least if it's Gruden Mayock, Belichick doing a mock draft, it's just the biggest dumpster fire ever. But I think at least the two of us are very self-aware, or at least we give the respect to the fact that there's a lot of stuff that goes on that we don't know.
Yes.
Like with Mecole Hardman, who I haven't spoken about that yet on this because we haven't done a podcast, but that's a guy that I think he might not ever play another NFL game. But we don't know that stuff's going on.
Yeah.
All those weeks that fans, and I was one of them, are saying, man, you can't get this guy in on a jet sweep or something. He's giving the other team the playbook. Of course they're not going to give him the ball.
He's getting beat out by Gibson, the rookie return man.
Yeah,
we're like, he's not getting on the field.
And he says, I lost all respect for Saleh when he asked me to play through an injury. The interviewer goes, what was the injury? Hyperextended pinky?
Dude.
What? Ronnie Lott cut his finger off and went back into a game. Put some tape on it and get out there.
Catch a punt. For a guy that's not playing either.
For a guy that's not playing, you got all this guaranteed money. You got all entitled with it because you won 2 Super Bowls you didn't do anything in. And now, of course, he goes and catches the game winner, and he's this big hero. But even Chiefs fans know.
So let me ask you this, right? And Chief fans know he's not a good player. No. Let me ask you this. And right after the game, I had actually, does it bother you? And you said, no, it doesn't bother me at all. He sucked as a Jet. It didn't matter. Now with this coming out, like him talking crap about the Jets, and, now he's just a bad dude. Like, he was giving the other team the plays. He didn't want to play. Like, does it piss you off more now that he caught the pass? Just because he gets the recognition, right? Is that what it is?
I don't know. Because do we feel like Hardman's become and I'm genuinely asking, do we feel like Hardman's become a star after catching that? I don't think so. I don't think at all. I mean,
he was good in that Raising Cane's video. I actually enjoyed that.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah, he was good in that. A lot of when like the celebrities championship, they go to the Raising Cane's and they work for a couple hours. They do a nice video. Him and I forget who he was with. It was funny as hell. They did a good job.
Okay.
But now looking back on it and finding out what he's potentially done, no.
I'm gonna make a bad joke. But I'm prefacing it with a bad joke. Did he give Chick-fil-A the recipes?
Wow, there we go. Good one. That's a good one. You've had worse.
I've had way worse.
You've had way worse.
But yeah, I'll wrap this with my Hardman thoughts. Is just there's
bad guy.
That's a bad one. Did you see what Louis Riddick said at the combine about it?
Oh, if it's false
about safety? No, about safety. Because he said if it's false, but he said if it's true. First, he said if it's true. Think about the position you just put your teammates in. If the Philadelphia Eagles know the pass protection schemes, they know where the guard's not going to be when he pulls. They know where Wilson's going to be looking. Then you could get somebody. He said it in quotes. He said you can get your quarterback killed out there. Now, was he being literal? No, but I mean that's a player safety issue. That's an integrity issue, but if a team calls for a recommendation here and says to Joe Douglas, who you say what you want about Douglas, the guy's got enough respect around the league to make a judgment on a player he had.
Yeah.
If somebody calls around and says, and I think almost every GM has that, and if someone calls him or Robert Saleh and says, hey, is this stuff true? Did he give the playbook? to the other teams, and they said, we're pretty sure he did. They're not going to sign this guy because what happens if you don't play him for 4 or 5 weeks?
How about this? How about, hey, Rob, did you actually ask him to come into the game and he told you no? In some cases, that might be enough to tell you
that's enough right there.
Off.
For
in the NFL,
for a player who's totally expendable, for a player who's in the same category as Valdez-Scantling and Kadarius Toney in that Chiefs offense.
Yeah.
You have no. I mean, Kadarius Toney, that's another guy. If they released him, he might not play again in a game.
No, he's just a head case, though.
He's a total head case. He'd sign on somewhere, Miami or I don't know, a team that just loves, or Philadelphia, like a team like that would come in and grab him.
Where they feel their locker room is strong enough to try and almost fix him. And
and they're always going after those talented guys who are disgruntled and have bad past somewhere else. But they'll jump in and they'll say, hey, let's give this guy a shot. But he's not going to end up playing games for them.
Right.
So the Hardman thing bothers me just because he's an example of a huge issue in the league and in professional sports where players who think whether they've earned something or not, once players think they grow an entitlement that ruins their competitive nature. You get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
If Tom Brady went to Tampa and got beat out by an undrafted free agent, and then the coach asks him to play in week 3, he has no right to say no. I don't think. You know, if Kyle Trask came in and beat Brady out the first year, if Bruce Arians sat there and just said, wow, Trask is just way better.
Yeah.
Then in week 3 or 4, they're struggling at the position, and he says, hey, Tom, let's go, man. It's your week this week. And Brady says, no, I don't think so. I don't think he's even earned that entitlement with 6 Super Bowls, 2 MVPs. Yeah. I don't think he's even had that. So that pisses me off with Hardman.
That's enough.
A guy who's done absolutely. And I am so, like, Chris Mano. We know Chris Mano. We all love Chris Mano here at BTO Media, one of the first playbook guys. I talk to Chris all the time. I used to talk to Chris all the time about how how much respect I have for a guy who has the accomplishments that he has. Never played in a regular season game. Played in preseason games. Made it through Division I. Scratched and clawed his way onto 2 different rosters for training camps. I have a lot of respect for those guys. But then it's a guy like Hardman who I will, with my chest, say he has done absolutely nothing in this league because of the way he conducts himself. There's no pride in the way that he has gone about his business, if any of this is true.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
That'll be my only Hardman rant for the rest of time.
Yeah, he's done. There'll be no more Hardman other than him possibly being out of the league. I think that'll be the last time we mention Hardman on any of these shows.
Yeah, because he's absolutely until the Giants sign him, but he's absolutely worthless to me, and I'm done with him. And he actually did provide some great memes, though. The Hackett memes, there were some funny ones.
Yeah,
I like
a little bit.
I like the one about it said the Eagles and Chiefs games, because those were the games of the playbook. He said those games were the Jets' best games of the season because the other team was so confused at what they were looking at when they saw Hackett's playbook.
It's like we'll talk. We'll get into the Jets, as time goes on. But it's like, at least at Rodgers, it might cancel it out. It might just cancel Hackett out.
They'll be a top, if Rodgers can stay healthy, if they can put a line in front of him that's good enough to keep him healthy, then they'll be a top 20 offense in the league, no doubt in my mind. Which is a huge jump from worst in 20 years to top 20. That's a really big jump.
The bar is not high.
I'm setting the bar so low.
Bar's not high.
The Jets haven't finished top 25 in offense since 2015.
It's been a painful
Actually,
time.
no, they did once. They did once. I'm wrong. 2017. John Morton was their offensive coordinator. He's the pass game coordinator for the Broncos. That guy is a stud offensive coordinator, and nobody will hire him because he's old. But whatever. Josh McCown, 22 touchdowns that year.
There we go.
All right. We're wrapping it because we're rambling about Josh McCown now.
Yeah.
That's always a sign. Thanks for watching. Hour 20 here. Nice long chat. This is how it was intended, man. Just come on, chat it up for a little bit.
We were all over the place.
We were. That's what I was hoping for. Just kind of like a sit down at the table conversation for us.
Yeah.
A conversation we'd have in our normal day, most
Yeah.
of it. We'll post everything that's important on Instagram, TikTok at BTO Media. Make sure to follow it. Go follow the playbook. They're absolutely dominating right now. When I say they, I mean Gabe and Hardline Sports Talk, of course. Go check it out. Always great things coming there. And we will see you in the next live or maybe the first of the boroughs, depending on how scheduling works out. So stay tuned next week through for content. Check out the draft guide. So much stuff going on at BTO. I'm probably going to forget something, but thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with all of it. And we'll see you next time.